Well, thank you for joining us today for another installment of the Camp Family Honors College Fireside Chats. I am excited today to have with me Ian Wieland. Ian is a founding shareholder of Sagasser, Watkins & Wieland PC and currently serves as the firm's managing shareholder. Ian represents private and public sector employers in all aspects of labor relations and employment law matters, including employment discrimination, wrongful termination, harassment, retaliation, labor relations, union matters, class and representative actions, administrative agencies, and wage and hour disputes. He regularly counsels employers regarding human resources policy matters and in employee relations issues. Prior to practicing law, Ian worked with several California State Assembly and U.S. House of Representatives members, where he gained a unique understanding of the legislative process, strategic planning, outreach, and analysis. Further, he managed campaigns for several local elected officials and spent 2 years as a member consultant with the California State Assembly Speaker's Office of Member Services. He also worked as the program coordinator for the Kenneth L. Maddie Institute at Fresno State. Ian was selected as a member of the 40 Under 40 class of 2013 by Business Street Online. Ian was born and raised in Madera and currently lives in Fresno. He is married to Allie and they have 2 young boys. So good afternoon and thank you for joining me, Ian.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So we'll go ahead and get started. I mentioned that you grew up in Madera. Can you tell us a little bit more about your hometown, where you went to high school, and why you chose the Honors College?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Madera, which I think is kind of unique. And most of my childhood, I grew up in an area between Madera and Chowchilla out in the country. And I went to a little elementary school in the middle of nowhere called Dixieland. It's literally surrounded by fields between Madera and Chowchilla. And so growing up, most of my friends either were farmers or worked in ag or their parents did. And then I ended up going to Thomas Jefferson Junior High in Madera and then Madera High. And so that was, I think, a great experience. And my parents still live in Madera, and I still have a lot of family friends in Madera and a lot of ties and clients there. And so I think it was a great place to figure out that still impacts my life. And I went to Fresno State in the Camp Family Honors College because it was a great opportunity. I was looking at other universities. I got into a few of the UC schools, but just the program in the Honors College was I think a once in a lifetime opportunity. Just the benefits that were provided, and ultimately decided to do that. And I have no regrets because, going to the Honors College, in the different activities and student organizations, and internships that I did while I was at Fresno State have helped me get to where I am now. And if I went somewhere else, I really don't think I would be as ahead in my career as I am right now. So I think it was a great opportunity, and I'm glad I took it.
Yeah, and just looking at in your bio the different experiences you've had, which I do agree complement each other and provide you with a unique perspective. Can you share a little bit about what types of co-curricular activities you were involved with while at Fresno State that kind of set you up for that opportunity to get those different experiences?
Yeah. So, obviously, like, one aspect of the Family Honors College is you're with a tight-knit group of other scholars, and you go through and you have the same honors college classes together. So I got, to meet a lot of, folks that I still know and keep in contact with today through that. But I also, when I was at Fresno State, I was in a fraternity. I was in the Sigma Phi Epsilon SIGEP fraternity. And, some of my best friends to this day are folks that I met through the fraternity experience. But I also did things that were associated with my major. I was a political science and history double major, and so I was part of the political science and history clubs. Also did mock trial briefly, but I think fundamentally, like, what really shaped my progress early on is I did several internships through the Maddie Institute. I worked for local elected leaders, but I also got to do an internship with an assembly member in Sacramento one summer, and it was paid. And I also got to do a paid internship in Washington, D.C. for a local member of Congress. And that also led to a job for that member of Congress my last year in college. And so I think just that practical experience and getting me in with, real time folks that are actually doing the things that I wanted to do was helpful. And then also when I was going to Fresno State, I was able to work part-time at a law firm for 2 years in the file room. And fast forward, one of the attorneys I worked for was a guy named Howard Sagasser, who's now one of my law partners. The law firm is Sagasser, Watkins in Wieland. And so, it's just one of those things where I look fondly at Fresno State because I was able to do a lot of things while I was there that helped me get to where I am now.
So you shared that, it sounds like you have a lot of great memories, but what would you say is really your favorite memory from your college experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question because there's so many, favorite and like fond, memories. I think, I would say like I'd probably put them in like two groups, like more of the fun aspect of, I think what was unique about Fresno State is just loved going to the Fresno State football games while I was there and doing the tailgating and cheering on the Bulldogs and going to the Fresno State basketball games with friends. But also, one of my favorite experiences is when I was a student in the political science department. To the school's credit, there was a very diverse group of professors, and literally you would have a professor on the far left or have one on the far right and everything in between. And so we got exposed to a lot of different perspectives, and I have a lot of just fond memories of just those sometimes heated, but mostly intellectual discussions in class with my professors at Fresno State and other students. And so I would like to say like had a lot of fun, but I also very much enjoyed the excellent faculty that taught the classes that I had at Fresno State.
Yeah. And how did you decide to be a double major, both history and political science?
I think it was one of those things where I was kind of looking at law. I really liked history, but I also liked politics. And the benefit of having the Honors College scholarship is you have 4 years of scholarship. And I kind of early on decided that I could do both, and I could do both within 4 years. And if you're going to go to law school, kind of one of the prerequisites is you got to, be able to endure a lot of reading and writing. And so for both of those majors, I mean, essentially, what you do is a lot of reading and writing on your exams and writing papers. And I think, both helped me prepare for law school. Now, that said, if I were to go back and do it again, I'd probably do something more practical, like a business major. But, I liked history and I liked political science. And so I learned a lot. And, in hindsight, it helped me get to where I am.
That's good perspective. And so you mentioned that in hindsight, you would have done a more practical major. Is there anything else you would have done differently as you look back at your college experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously, I mentioned I did political science and history because I was interested in those. But quite frankly, you could do anything for a major and still go to, law school. And I have some of my best friends to this day were fellow political science, students. And so, I have those memories. But yeah, I think, there'd be two things I'd probably do differently. In hindsight, I would major in something from the business department just because, more practical. And when I'm dealing with my business clients, I think that, would be something that would be helpful. And the other thing that I regret not doing is not studying abroad while I was in college. I spent my summers, I think being too practical in that I went and interned in, Sacramento and Washington, D.C. But I I wish I would have spent a summer studying abroad, because I think that would have been a great opportunity. And there was, plenty of those opportunities at Fresno State while I was there.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's something I'm starting to hear a common theme amongst these fireside chats that I'm conducting is with our cohorts, being, at college, our career aspirations in mind, we were very focused and, trying to make sure that we were on that achievement path. And now with hindsight, we look back and it's like, well, it would have been, a good use of our time to travel abroad and enrich our lives from different perspectives than what we laid out specific to the career that we had in mind. So yeah, that's something I've heard in other interviews as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then let's transition then to your career. So right after college, did you start law school? Can you share with us just your path from Fresno State to where you are now?
Okay, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's kind of funny how things turned out, because if you look back, there's some people that if you were to look at my resume and what I've done, you might think that I was calculated and I had some master plan, but that was not at all. As I mentioned, I did my internships in politics while I was in college, and I finished my last year working in Congressman Jim Costa's Fresno office as I was graduating school, and I kind of had a fork in the road, either go to law school or I had some other opportunities in politics. I had applied to a lot of different law schools, and I decided to take a break from school and work in politics, and I had an opportunity to go to Sacramento and work in the California legislature in the Assembly Speaker's office. It was actually the SOME's Speaker's Office of Member Services, and I'm glad I did that for a lot of reasons. One, it got me out, and that was a lot of I've had a lot of experience, because essentially I was, serving various assembly members, most of which were from the Central Valley. But through that experience, I ended up meeting my wife, Allie, who was originally from Bakersfield. So the joke is I had to go to Sacramento to meet a girl from Bakersfield and move back to Fresno, but that's what we did. And so when I met her, she was working in the legislature too, and she was working for one of the members I was assigned to, Assemblywoman Kathleen Galgiani from, at the time she represented a district from Merced to Stockton. And Allie had already started her first year of law school at Lincoln Law in Sacramento. And one of the reasons I decided to do politics is as I mentioned, I had worked in a file room at a law firm in Fresno for a couple of years, and I saw how hard lawyers work. And so I, let's do something different. And I said, law school is always gonna be there. But what I found in politics is we worked a lot. I mean, we had to do, a lot, not only in the legislature, but during election season, we spent a lot of time doing campaigns, and it was a lot of long hours, and we didn't get paid very much. And so at a certain point, we kind of just realized, well, if we're going to work this hard, might as well be lawyers. And so in 2009, Allie and I decided to move back to Fresno, and she, transferred from Lincoln to San Joaquin College of Law. And I started my first year at San Joaquin College of Law. And kind of coming full circle, when I came back, I let, the law firm know that I had worked as a file clerk, that I was back. And oddly enough, they were going through a split. Like the partners were going their different ways and creating two law firms. And so while I was going to San Joaquin, I spent my first summer after my first year of law school clerking at a firm called Jones Helsley. It's now called Wanger Jones Helsley. And then after that, Howard Sagesser called me, and I went to go work at Atkinson Andelson as a clerk during my later time in law school, and eventually got a job at Atkinson Andelson. And in 2013, Howard Sagesser and Cal Watkins and I and a few others left and created the current law firm that we're at. But what was interesting is I went to law school thinking I was going to do water law. My dad is a retired judge in Madera County, and at the time he was a judge, and he encouraged me to do water law and that. And from working in politics, I was interested in it. But when I worked at Jones Helsley, I worked for an attorney named Michael Helsley that practiced employment law. Then I went to work for Howard and Cal, and they did strictly employment law. And I found out like that was pretty interesting. And given that we're in California, there's a lot of employment and labor laws that businesses, employers have to deal with, and there's just a constant need. And so I jumped into that. And then the other interesting thing was between the two law firms, I worked at the Maddie Institute at Fresno State, and I had gone through the program. I was an alum. The executive director at the time, Mark Kepler, needed a program manager, and I went and knew him, and I got the job, and that was great. Things kind of come full circle, because not only did I do the Maddie Institute, but Mark Kepler on the side works as a labor arbitrator and mediator. He was a defense employment attorney like myself before becoming a college professor, and so I look at his arbitration decisions and different things. So it's another exposure, kind of what I'm doing now, and since 2013. We've had the president firm, Sagaster Watkins in Wieland. We've grown to have a handful of attorneys, to now we have 18 lawyers. We have our main offices in Fresno, but we also have satellite offices in Bakersfield, Hanford, and San Luis Obispo. So our practice mainly spans between Bakersfield and Stockton and over to the Central Coast. And because we represent a lot of ag employers and ag-related employers, we have clients all over the state that contact us for ag labor related reasons. And so it's been a very fun journey. And like I said, if you were to look back at it, you might think that I was calculated, but it all just kind of was just random. And I took opportunities as they come and ended up where I am now.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I always love hearing people's stories, because when we're starting in college, we feel like this pressure to pick our the perfect major, right, that's going to set us up for lifelong success. And it's so reassuring to hear that a lot of it is just continuing to say yes to the things that interest us and we want to learn more about, and then just to have faith in that process that we'll end up at a spot that makes sense and will be fulfilling. So thank you for sharing your journey and how, it's worked out quite nicely without that premeditated plan being necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah, luck maybe, but yeah. But it's also putting yourself in the right position too, I think. So. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, they say luck is opportunity meeting preparedness. So yeah, you definitely have to, take the initiative, be prepared, and then seizing the opportunity when it's presented. So, all right. And then being in labor law, the pandemic has had a huge impact, I would imagine, in terms of your work. So can you share a little bit about what you've seen, or I guess any insights from the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think obviously the pandemic has impacted everyone, and I think in the workplace, every industry. And in our area of the law, what's interesting and I think unique is, there's two aspects of what we do. One, I'm a litigator in that if someone is being sued, when I say someone, usually it's a company, employer, they're being sued for, wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination, retaliation type case, or a wage and hour case, wage and hour class action pocket case. Spend a lot of time defending those. I also defend a lot of government audits and actions, and so that's one aspect. The other aspect is what we do, what we call general labor advice. We're literally every day clients reach out. It could be small employers, medium-sized, large employers that are just asking for guidance on how to comply with California and federal labor laws. And it could be, I have an employee that's taking leave, like what leave laws apply. I'm looking at, potentially disciplining or terminating someone. I want an employee handbook. I want this policy, advice on various situations. And during the pandemic, our area of the law, we are busy, during normal times, but during the pandemic, we were even busier. We were in this odd reality where most of the courts were just paused. Kind of the courts were kind of the slowest to react, and they just put everything on pause, and so all of our litigation matters were just on hold. And so like the reality of that situation is now like literally most of the court dockets are years behind, and we have kind of a bottleneck of cases. But you would think, okay, you probably weren't as busy, and no, we were slammed, because the reality is during the pandemic, our clients, businesses, employers had to comply with all the different changing rules. We had different federal and state sick leave laws. We had Cal OSHA COVID safety compliance rules that kept changing. Could you test your employees for COVID-19? Could you require the vaccine? All those questions, right? And so we remained extremely busy, if not more busy, during the pandemic, and that hasn't slowed down, because obviously, those issues still remain. There's still a lot of regulation and laws relating to COVID-19, and so it's just really added another layer to our practice. But the other thing that I think is really good for, I think, the whole legal field is, before the pandemic, it was really old school. Like, we had this mentality for everything that we had to do everything in person. Had to go to court in person, depositions in person, mediation, arbitration, meetings in person, right? And a lot of the older attorneys, you have to come to the office every day and show your face and be here. And so one of the pleasant things that I've enjoyed is, before, I was traveling all over the valley, driving to Bakersfield, Tulare, Madera, Merced, the coast. I was in San Diego, LA, the Bay Area, a few times a year for various reasons. That's all done, like, for the most part. I mean, there's some things that I have to travel to in person, but 90 to 95% of that's been wiped out, because the reality is we can do a lot of it, via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, which saves us travel time. It saves our clients money. They don't have to travel. They don't have to pay me to like travel. And that allows me to spend more time with my wife and kids and do other things. So there's a lot of positives there. And there's also, for a lot of folks that work at our law firm, and I know other folks at other law firms are able to work remotely from various places, and there's more flexibility there. And I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, our industry, there's no way like that would have happened anytime soon. And so I think there's a lot of positives that have come out of that, and we've learned a lot about how, I really don't need to be in the office every day. I really don't need to do all these things in person, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, no, agreed. And when you first started talking about, the need to physically go into court, it reminded me of the viral video of the man who couldn't take his, was it a cat filter off his Zoom while in front of a judge. And so, yeah, I think all of us got a good chuckle out of that. So.
Oh, well, we've had a few, right? Because it's been shifting. Like, we've had some courts that had never had a lot of these things we would do on court call, and then all of a sudden they would require Zoom. And I'm dressed pretty casual today. It's a casual Friday. And I had a couple of attorneys in my office get caught off guard, because it was like, it went from a court call to I got to appear via Zoom, and I'm dressed in a polo shirt, not in a suit and tie. And so they were literally doing a court call with the phone, so the judge would just see their face, so the judge wouldn't get upset. So we've had, I think that's been a common thing. Or I've had my own personal experiences where we would go on the Zoom, and attorneys for various reasons like didn't know how to use it, and just a lot of comical experiences. Not like the cat filter, but pretty close.
Yeah. Well, we all at least got a laugh out of it. And I think overall, I think it's taught us all to not be quite so rigid. I'll say that it was a pretty commonplace for my coworkers when working from home. Their kids would run in, and, so you'd see a superhero standing behind someone that, typically they were just, Kate. And so now you can see a different aspect. So it's also create, I think, more personality, where we've gotten to know each other a bit more. So.
Absolutely.
So let's transition then. I know you had mentioned your wife, and meeting up in Sacramento. And then you have two boys, or two children?
Yeah, we have two young boys. Yeah. Easton, he's 6, and then my youngest is Bo, and he turns 4 next week.
Fabulous. And so I imagine they keep you pretty busy. Any surprises there, anything you'd want to share with maybe former classmates who you haven't seen in a while?
Yeah, so if people haven't seen me in a while, yeah, like obviously having kids, anyone that's had a child or multiple, realizes that that's just a big game changer. And my wife and I are fortunate in that we live in the Old Fig neighborhood of Fresno, and there's a big, strong sense of community. There's been a lot of young families that have moved in the neighborhood, and it's been fun to raise our kids there, and just the different personalities. And yeah, to your point, Ashley, like when I'm not practicing law or doing some of the community activities we're involved in, the kids take up the rest of our time. They're starting to get to that age where they're starting to play sports and do various activities, but it's a lot of fun. And even though one of them is kind of my mini me, he's got a whole different personality and different characteristics, and they're both fun, and but they have their own unique style and what they're interested in too. And so it's been a lot of fun to just spend time with them and watch them grow.
Yeah, so I know you mentioned earlier, moving back and you're being from Madera, and Fresno is relatively close, but what really was the draw? And you may have touched on this a little bit, but anything, that really drew you back to the Central Valley after going up to Sacramento?
Yeah, and so it was basically, at graduating from Fresno State, my thinking is if I was going to go to law school, because I was from Madera, went to Fresno State, is I was looking at getting far, far away. I was applying to schools on the East Coast, the South, and if I would have gone to law school, I would have gone out of state just to have a different experience. But fortunately, I decided to take a break, and it led me to where I'm at now. But what led us to ultimately come back is just, in 2008, 2009, we were kind of in the height of, the last downturn in the economy. And just because we were working in jobs that were funded by taxpayers, we were not going to get a raise anytime soon. And so at the time, it was before she was my wife, but Allie, who's now my wife, we were dating, and we decided just to come back to the Valley because we felt, when the economy was in a downturn, if we're going to go to law school at that time, there was a lot of folks coming out of law school that weren't getting jobs. And obviously, going back here, because I went to Fresno State, I had worked at that law firm before, knew people from, the area, just had more opportunities. And also, quite frankly, like San Joaquin College of Law is an excellent program, and it's a lot cheaper than going to McGeorge or another law school. And at the time, it was like a third of the cost of going to McGeorge, and so it made a lot of sense, especially if you're going to stay locally, to just go there. Because quite frankly, after you've been a lawyer for a year, no one cares, where you went to law school. It's, are you a competent lawyer, and are you able to do a job? And so that's kind of factored into, what made us come back to Fresno.
Yeah. And then now that you have the perspective of being in your career, how do you define success? And do you think that definition has changed over time?
Yeah, I think like defining success, I think it definitely changes over time. I mean, I think when we're, back in school, in the honors college, I think, most folks that are going through, it's getting those good grades, right? Like, so, and, doing well in school. And so I think how I define success now is, obviously, I want my family to do well and be able to take care of my family first and foremost. But second, I want the law firm to be growing and thriving, and want to have a good reputation in a place where clients come to us because they trust us and they know we're going to look after their best interests and do a good job, and basically treat them as if they were our own business, friends and family. And we try to have those long-standing relationships. But also, part of success is being involved in the community. Like, we are very If you look at the shareholders of the firm, we're all on various boards and nonprofit organizations in town. And so I think part of it is giving back and making sure that the success that we're having, also goes, to worthy charities and causes that we all believe in. Because it doesn't really help if some people are doing well, but others aren't, right? And so if you look at our resumes and bios, like we're all on various boards, and that's something that we really push folks to do, is get involved and give back to the local community.
Can you share what specific areas where you're involved giving back to the community?
Yeah. And so I've made the mistake of being a person that goes to a board meeting and then I raise my hand and talk, and all of a sudden I get on the executive committee and leadership. And so one of those boards that I've enjoyed being a part of is the Fresno Chamber of Commerce. And what's I think interesting about the Fresno Chamber is the Fresno Chamber is actually slightly older than the city of Fresno, and so it's one of the oldest and most successful chambers in the state. And I got on the Fresno Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I think in 2016 or 2017, and it was because some clients urged me to. And like I said, I talked at a meeting too much, and I eventually got picked to be on the executive committee, and I became the chair in 2020. And of course, it was one of those things like, you're just going to do a little bit of volunteer time, and then the pandemic hit, and so we had to make a lot of changes. And I'm currently the chair of the Fresno Chamber Political Action Committee, and so that's been fun. And your husband Ryan's on that committee with me, and so it's good to always see him there. So the chambers take up a lot of my volunteer time. I'm also on the Fresno County Bar Association Board of Directors, which is the Bar Association is the organization for attorneys in Fresno, and that's something I was elected to, serving my first term doing that. And then I recently, even though I didn't go to the Craig School of Business just because of the area of law that we do, I served 6 years on the Business Associates Craig School of Business board, and I termed off earlier this year. That was a great board to be on. And I'm also currently on the Fresno State Alumni Association board. It's one of those things, they saw that I was terming off one, and they're like, oh, we can put you on the Fresno State Alumni Association board. And that's been a fun board to be on. I recently joined that last year. And then the other one I'm on is the Maddie Institute. I'm on the Maddie Institute Board of Directors, and I've kind of come full circle because I was an intern, so I'm an alum of the Maddie Institute, and then I worked at the Institute for about a year when I was going to law school, and now I'm on the board. And so that's one that I'm very passionate about, because the Maddie Institute, and I've seen it not only with me, but a lot of friends and then folks that I know that have come after me. The Maddie Institute is an excellent program in that it provides these paid internships for students to go and work in political offices. And what I've also found is those same skills translate into law. We've hired a high percentage of Maddie Institute alum and also Smith-Camp Family Honors College alum to work in our office. And some of them have come back and gone to law school, and then they're lawyers. I actually have 3 attorneys, including myself, that are alums of both the Smith-Camp Family Honors College and the Maddie Institute. And so that's, so both programs I believe in. And so do it a lot. The Fresno State boards, aren't as time, challenging, but definitely spend a lot of time with the Fresno Chamber. And then lastly, they would kill me if I didn't mention this one, but I'm also on the Fresno Business Council, on the executive committee there. And so basically, a lot of what I do is either being involved at, Fresno State or our business community, helping local businesses thrive and some of the, challenges that they face. And quite frankly, one of the biggest challenges that members of the Business Council and the Chamber face are labor laws. And so it's natural if they have a labor attorney there to, give some advice on those issues.
Yeah. So I have to ask, with all that you're handling, what are some of the habits you've developed to manage your stress levels?
Yeah, so you definitely got to be able to walk away. And so one of the things that my partner Howard Sagister taught me early on is you have to take vacation. You have to schedule it like it's a trial, because especially when you do litigation, it's easy to just stay busy and then never take a vacation. And lawyers are probably one of the worst professions that are notoriously workaholics, right? And so you got to make it a point to, I'm going to do this. And fortunately, we have a great team in place that allows us to go do it, and people can manage things while we're out. So that's number one. And number two, I have to do things where I just check out, right? I have to leave the work in different things and just go check out. And so what I like to do is I like to work out, go on walks. I also play, tennis regularly, things that allow me to, stay active and literally just, check out, especially, during the pandemic. There were just days, especially every time Governor Newsom would issue some new executive order about a new paid sick leave, like my cell phone, like every attorney in my office would just light up, or emails would light up. And, and so there was a lot of days, a lot of weeks where we were just working nonstop to try to just help people stay on top of everything. But that's only sustainable for so long. And you literally just have to take breaks, and you have to make sure you take care of your mental well-being and your physical well-being, right? And so part of that is, doing other activities, other hobbies that you enjoy doing away from work.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Do you mind if we transition to some rapid fire questions?
Absolutely.
All right. So going back to your college days, what was your favorite course?
So yeah, I think my favorite course was I had a political theory course in the political science department that went all the way back to Machiavelli and Locke and Hobbes, and it was just interesting because of the way that the professor taught it. And the professor was Dr. Abosh, and I believe he's still teaching in the political science department, and he also taught the constitutional law classes, and he also taught moot court. And so I think Dr. Abosh was probably my favorite professor at Fresno State.
Okay, awesome. Where was your favorite place to eat at, and what did you order?
So definitely Doghouse Grill, and I know like now like Doghouse is famous. Every time you drive by Doghouse right in front of the Save Mart Center, there's a line going out that place, right? But Doghouse opened when I was going to Fresno State, right? And so it was kind of a new thing, and Campus Point wasn't there, obviously, for a lot of us, and so there wasn't options. But a lot of my friends work there, and so I enjoy going there. And so a lot of great things at Doghouse, really can't go wrong. But the favorite was always the tri-tip sandwich, still is.
Yep. All right, transition to present day. What is something your classmates would be surprised to hear you're doing now?
So, yeah, given the some of the politicians I worked for, some people would probably be shocked that I represent businesses and employers exclusively, and I'm on the business side. And that also, I was chair of the Fresno Chamber of Commerce. And what was cool about that, and I didn't really realize until it actually happened, is I was 36 years old. I was 36 years old when I became the chair of the Fresno Chamber, and I'm the youngest person to ever serve as the chair of the Fresno Chamber of Commerce. So I always thought that was pretty cool. And I think if we were back in college, most of my colleagues would never thought of I'd be even involved with the chamber, or even representing the side that I'm on. I probably thought I'd be a plaintiff's attorney or something. So
yeah, thanks for sharing that. So tell me, what's the most exciting thing in your life right now?
So the exciting thing is it's probably my two boys, is just going home and spending time with them, and just seeing how fast they grow. I mean, everyone says it, and it's kind of cliche to be like, the time just flies by when you have kids, but it's really true. It's really true. And I'm trying to not take that for granted. And so despite all the professional things that we do, the exciting thing is, just the different things my kids are doing from day to day and having fun with them.
Yeah, my favorite phrase for parenting is that the days are long, but the years are short, because when you're in it, it's hard to sometimes appreciate, because there's a lot of patience that's necessary with parenting. But yeah, you've got to really be intentional, because the time goes fast.
Absolutely.
What are you completely bored of right now?
So yeah, like the one aspect, and I think in talking to a lot of professionals, not just lawyers, is just looking at emails on my computer screen. One of the things that we've seen, there's pros and cons of it, but just a lot of the things that we would receive through the mail, we're getting it all via email. And so literally, if I'm in meetings all day, or if I'm in a deposition, I'll get 500 emails. And a lot of them are like just things you're CC'd on or whatever, but you have to go through them and to get to the things you really need to respond to, like an important client email or something from the court. And so I think, one of the things I'm tired of is just looking at emails for hours. I think a lot of us are in that same boat.
Yes, agreed. And, so much so that I don't read ebooks like I used to. And I make sure that I get a hard copy book to look at a different screen, or, a different format. With that said, is there a book you're reading right now?
Yeah, one of the, I read two types of books, either kind of like history, based, or just kind of like professional development or personal development. And so one of the books I'm reading is The 4-Hour Workweek. For what I do, like, that's never going to happen, but I try to like get some key takeaways about like how, I can be more efficient with my time and things that I can be doing better. So ultimately, I'm not just a slave to the workplace, and I can, spend more time doing other things that I want to do.
Yeah. And with that said, I just saw on LinkedIn a trending article was that the 4-day work week is a key negotiation item that employees are looking for. Because, I think everyone is, as a result of the last couple of years, reflecting on how they spend their time. And so wanting to make sure that it's the highest and best use. So,
yeah. And actually, it's funny that you said that, because I misspoke. The book I'm reading is The 4-Hour Workday. But as a labor attorney, I misspoke because everyone's been asking me about the 4-day work week, right? But it's really, the book is the 4-Hour Workday, which is never going to happen. But yeah, to your point, there is, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but there is push in Sacramento right now for that change.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And then, is there a book that you've reread multiple times or have gifted to others frequently?
Probably the book that I've read a couple times, and it's something that I've suggested other people read, and it definitely, in our office, we passed around copies. It's The Cadillac Desert. If you're not familiar with the Cadillac Desert, it's basically a history of water in California, and it goes back to Bob Mulholland, who was the director of what is now the LA Water and Power, and how they went through and dammed a bunch of rivers over history and kind of shaped water in California. And it's a really interesting read, because it parts of it talks about California, but it also talks about the Colorado River, and it's centered on the water crisis. And this is a book that was written 25 years ago now, and so it's even more relevant now, I would say. But it gives you that back history of water in the Western United States, and some of the chapters focus on California, but I think it's really interesting in that it gives you that perspective of why we are, of how we got to where we are with water and our water challenges, and it's one of those things like the movie from the 80s, Chinatown, with Jack Nicholson, about water. There's a chapter that's literally probably that movie's based on on that chapter. And so there's a lot of interesting, just true stories about water on the West Coast, but a lot of the ones in California hit home.
All right, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And last question for you, one piece of advice you'd give to college students?
Yeah, one of the things that I think really helped me is, and others that I've seen go through since then, is get involved. I think life's a contact sport, and so one, go out and meet people and get involved. It could be in the community, but when you're on campus, getting involved in student organizations and make those contacts, because you just never know. Like one of the things that's really helped me is just those relationships I developed at Fresno State, or folks now that I work with in trade organizations, or that are clients, etc., neighbors. And the other thing is do internships. Like if you're thinking about going into a certain industry or doing a certain job, like do an internship. And maybe you find out you don't like it. Maybe you find out that you like it. But by doing those internships, you get some work experience, and find out if you want to do it. And if you don't, you can go to something else. So, get those contacts by being involved and do internships.
Yeah, no, I think that's to your first point. In college, the concept of networking is discussed and the importance of it. And I would say it wasn't until more recently that I realized that networking is something that we do on a daily basis. It's not, a mixer that's held annually at a conference center. And so, taking advantage of everyday moments and building those relationships are super important. So I definitely agree. And yeah, the internship experience allows students to get that real world experience and helps, guide them in their path. So that way they can make the best decision for, where their right fit is. So agreed wholeheartedly. Well, thank you so much, Ian. I do appreciate your time today and, for sharing your experiences and also some of your reflections. And I think that our students and community members will find it most helpful. So thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ashley. Have a great weekend.
All right, thanks.